Elara knew Oakhaven, or she thought she did. Every corner, every shadow seemed familiar. It was a small town nestled deep in folds of green countryside, a place where time seemed to stand still, the kind of town where everyone knew your name, and greeted you with a warm smile, and perhaps they knew your secrets too. Whispers carried on the wind, old houses lined the winding streets, each one with its own story to tell. They watched with dark window eyes. Silent sentinels of the past, paint peeled from their wooden skins like old sunburn, a testament to the passage of time. Elara often felt their gaze as she walked, a feeling of being watched yet comforted. She thought they remembered things. Secrets whispered through the ages, things people had long forgotten, memories etched into the very walls. The air in Oakhaven was thick, heavy with history and untold stories. It was thick with the smell of damp earth, and old wood, a scent that lingered, and something else, something sweet and sad, like a distant memory, like forgotten pressed flowers in a dusty book. Time moved differently here. It stretched and yawned almost lazily. It sometimes even seemed to loop back on itself, a place where past and present intertwined. Clocks ticked, but they never seemed to hurry. Elara felt this slowness. It was a part of her now. It seeped into her bones, a gentle, persistent presence. It made her thoughtful, and a little bit wary, aware of the weight of history. Life in Oakhaven was a gentle rhythm. The seasons turned slowly, each one bringing its own charm. The people moved with a measured pace, as if they had all the time in the world. They spoke in soft voices as if not to disturb the quiet. Conversations were gentle murmurs. Children played in overgrown gardens, their laughter a bright, brief sound. Their laughter was a bright, brief sound, a fleeting moment of joy in the stillness. Bennet Hill stood guard over Oakhaven, a town that seemed to nestle in its shadow. It was not a fierce mountain, but a gentle giant. It was a gentle, rounded slope, inviting yet mysterious, covered in trees that whispered to the wind, sharing secrets only they knew. The hill had always been there, or so it seemed to the townsfolk. It was older than the town itself, older than the oldest memories passed down through generations. The Bennet family had owned the land for generations, their legacy intertwined with the hill. They said a Bennet had first cleared the trees, making way for the first farmhouse. A Bennet had first built a farmhouse on its rise, a testament to their enduring presence. The name Bennet was woven into the fabric of Oakhaven, a name that carried weight. It was on street signs marking their territory. It was on the old library building, a place of knowledge and history. It was whispered in stories told by grandmothers, tales of old times. The Bennets were part of the hill, as much as the hill was part of them. And the hill was part of them, a symbiotic relationship. They didn't just own the land, they belonged to it, heart and soul. Like the ancient oaks that clung to its soil, their roots ran deep, deeper than anyone could truly know, deeper than the surface revealed. Or so the stories went, on long dark evenings when the wind howled. People in Oakhaven spoke of Bennet Hill with a certain respect, a reverence, a kind of quiet awe, a recognition of its silent power. They didn't go up there much, preferring to admire it from afar, not unless they had a reason, a purpose that called them. It was private land, after all, guarded by the Bennet legacy. But more than that, it felt like a private place, a sanctuary, a place that held its breath, waiting for the next chapter in its long story. Elara drove her usual route. The road curved around the base of Bennet Hill. The trees were dense here. Their branches reached out like gnarled fingers. Sunlight dappled through the leaves. It made shifting patterns on the asphalt. Elara knew this stretch of road by heart. Every bump, every turn, every shadow, or so she believed. The familiar comfort of the routine usually soothed her. Today, however, something felt different. A strange feeling settled over her. It was like a faint hum in the air, or a note of music just out of hearing range. She couldn't quite name it. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was more like anticipation, as if something was about to happen, something unexpected. She gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. Her eyes scanned the trees. The familiar green seemed deeper today, more intense, almost watchful. She passed the old moss-covered stone wall, the one that marked the lower boundary of the Bennet property. It had always been there, a steadfast, silent sentinel. But today, her gaze was drawn further up the slope. And then she saw it, tucked away, slightly obscured by an overgrown bush, a sign. It was old, very old, made of dark weathered wood. The letters carved into it were faded, almost illegible, but she could just make them out. Bennet Hill. It stood at a slight angle, as if it had been there for a very long time. Long enough for the earth to settle around its post. Long enough for the weather to etch its story onto its surface. Alara blinked. She was sure she had never seen that sign before. How could she have missed it? She drove this road every single day, twice, once in the morning, once in the evening. Her eyes were usually sharp. She noticed things. A new bird's nest, a fallen branch, a change in the wildflowers by the roadside. But this sign? It was impossible. It looked ancient, as if it had been standing there for 100 years. The sign had a strange presence. It wasn't just a piece of wood with letters. It felt important, significant, like a forgotten marker from a different time. The carving was deep. A shiver traced its way down Alara's spine. It wasn't a cold shiver, it was a shiver of something else, something she couldn't name. Déjà vu. That was the word. But it was stronger than any déjà vu she had ever experienced. It was as if a forgotten memory was trying to surface, clawing its way up from the depths of her mind. The sign felt impossibly familiar, like a lost piece of a puzzle she didn't know she was solving. She stared at the weathered wood, the faded letters. Bennet Hill. Had she seen it in a dream, or perhaps in an old photograph? No, that wasn't it. The feeling was more immediate, more visceral, as if she had stood in this very spot before, looking at this very sign. A long, long time ago. But that was impossible, she was sure it was. Her childhood memories were clear. This sign was not in them. The sign looked like it belonged there. It fit the landscape perfectly, as if it had grown out of the earth itself, like the ancient trees that surrounded it. The next morning, Alara approached Bennet Hill with a sense of anticipation, and a little dread. She wanted to see the sign again, to study it more closely, to try and understand the strange feelings it evoked. The sun was bright, the trees cast long shadows, and the road was empty, just as it always was at this time of day. She slowed the car as she neared the spot, the little clearing through the trees, the overgrown bush, but the sign was gone. Simply gone. Alara stopped the car. Her heart pounded in her chest. She stared at the spot where it had been. There was nothing. Just the bush, the trees, and the damp earth. No sign, no hole in the ground where a post might have been. No indication that anything had ever stood there. It was as if the sign had never existed, as if it had been a figment of her imagination. She got out of the car, her legs felt a little unsteady. Alara felt a growing obsession. She had to know if the sign was real. She began to ask around, subtly at first. She didn't want to sound crazy. She mentioned it casually to Mrs. Gable at the post office. "That old Bennet Hill sign," she'd said. "It's quite weathered, isn't it?" Mrs. Gable had looked at her blankly, a polite vacant smile. "Bennet Hill sign, dear?" she'd replied. "I don't recall any sign up there. Not for many years anyway." She tried Mr. Henderson at the general store. He was old. He knew everything about Oakhaven. Or so people said. "Mr. Henderson," Alara began, choosing her words carefully. "Do you remember an old wooden sign for Bennet Hill up on the North Road?" He peered at her over his spectacles, his brow furrowed in thought. "A sign, you say? Wooden?" He shook his head slowly. "No, can't say I do. The Bennets never much cared for signs." Each denial was like a small pinprick adding to her unease. Oakhaven seemed to change after that, or perhaps it was Alara who had changed. The quiet streets now felt watchful. The leaning houses seemed to whisper secrets she couldn't quite hear. The familiar routines of the town took on a slightly sinister edge, as if they were a performance. A carefully constructed facade hiding something else, something hidden just beneath the surface, something connected to the vanished sign. The people she spoke to, their blank looks, their polite denials, it began to feel less like forgetfulness and more like a deliberate silence. A shared secret that she was not privy to. Was it possible? Could an entire town conspire to forget something, or to pretend it never existed? The thought sent a chill through her. Alara never saw the Bennet Hill sign again. It remained a ghost in her memory, a vivid, unsettling image that refused to fade. Sometimes she wondered if she should just forget about it, let it slip into the recesses of her mind, chalk it up to stress or an overactive imagination. But she couldn't. The memory clung to her like a shadow. The feeling of its reality was too strong, too palpable to dismiss. The sense of déjà vu too profound. It had been there, she knew it, and then it hadn't. The paradox gnawed at her. That was the simple, impossible truth, an enigma she couldn't unravel. The town of Oakhaven never felt quite the same to her, its charm now tinged with an eerie undercurrent. The quietness now had an edge, a sharpness that cut through the tranquility. The familiar faces seemed to hold a hint of knowing, a secret they shared in silence. Or was that just her projecting her own unease onto them? She couldn't be sure. Doubt clouded her judgment. The experience had left a mark, an indelible impression on her psyche. A small crack in her perception of the world, a fissure that hinted at deeper mysteries. A reminder that not everything could be explained, not everything made sense. Some things defied logic, especially not in a place like Oakhaven, where the ordinary and the extraordinary intertwined. She continued her daily drives. Past Bennet Hill, the silent sentinel of her unease. Past the empty spot where the sign had stood, a void that echoed in her mind. She often slowed down, just for a moment, half expecting to see it, half afraid that she might. The anticipation was a constant companion. The hill remained, silent, watchful, a guardian of secrets, its secrets locked away beneath its green mantle, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves.